The first sign of trouble wasn't the slapping noise. It was the way every human in the room stopped breathing at once, like someone had unplugged their collective moral support systems mid-download. The diplomatic reception aboard the Galactic, Peace Harmony whatever station, had been trudging along exactly as predicted. Overpriced sparkling algae water, awkward hover toasts, and more species politely pretending they understood Earth sarcasm than any reasonable treaty should allow. Commander Jenna Banshee Briggs stood there, resplendent in her official human delegate jumpsuit, a tailored hybrid of diplomatic velvet and tactical armor plating, with a look on her face that screamed, "Try me, Sparkle Muppet," despite the smile saying, "I brought snacks." Her 12-year-old daughter, Ellie, wore the universal look of a kid dragged to a parent's work event, bored, sugar-deprived, and seconds from causing a galactic incident via idle curiosity. She found it. A glittering Zebleck sculpture that looked like someone had hot-glued an existential crisis together using crystal shards and passive-aggressive symbolism. With all the innocent grace of a child raised on gravity-defying monkey bars and zero respect for do-not-touch signs, Ellie poked it. It shattered like an overpriced promise in a bureaucratic void. And then, Ambassador Glarbthax, the reasonably tall, who resembled a praying mantis dipped in holographic anxiety, reared back and slapped her. It was not a hard slap. It was not, in fact, a strategic or even particularly satisfying slap. But it was a slap nonetheless, across the cheek, in public, in front of humans, on camera, with audio, and just like that, silence fell. Not the dignified diplomatic silence of awkward proceedings, but the silence of unholy cosmic stillness, the kind of silence that precedes lawsuits, funerals, and very polite but extremely targeted orbital bombardments. Commander Briggs's eyes narrowed, her nostrils flared. Her combat boots whispered death across the polished floor as she took exactly 3 steps forward and tapped the sleek silver comm node on her chest. "Control, this is Mom Bear Actual," she said, her voice like velvet-coated razor wire. "We've got a code diaper fire. Confirm kinetic release on standby. Oh, and ping her dad." The ambassador blinked, his pupils dilating like a camera trying to hide from its own mistakes. "You can't be serious," he chirped, voice cracking like his diplomatic immunity. "You assaulted my daughter, Glitterbug," Briggs replied, pulling a wet wipe from her tactical hip pouch with a kind of lethal grace that made nearby security flinch. "You just made contact with the only part of Earth's legal system that doesn't believe in proportional response." Ellie sniffled once, then asked, "Can I press the button, Mom?" "Not yet, baby, but soon." At that precise moment, back on Earth, an emergency ping lit up the secure line in a quiet Alaskan suburb, where a man in a coffee-stained flight suit was assembling a birdhouse with military precision. Admiral Flint Dad Joke Briggs didn't say a word. He just turned to the camera, adjusted his old wedding ring, and whispered, "So it begins." Moments later, across 7 continents and 12 hidden orbital platforms, unregistered, civilian ships began switching to military transponders. Grandma units rolled out of bunks. Uncles reactivated encrypted command chains. Aunts dusted off threat assessment flowcharts labeled, "In case of toddler endangerment." They weren't coming for war. They were coming for closure, and possibly snacks, but mostly vengeance. The first ship arrived 32 minutes later. It looked like a long-haul cargo hauler from the outside, dented, rust-kissed, with the words "Larry's Spare Tires and Grill Supplies" painted in peeling red letters. But the moment it breached Peace Harmony whatever station's orbital zone, it dropped its disguise faster than a teenager closing tabs when their mom walks in. Quad-lattice defense grids snapped online. The hull unfolded like an origami war god. And suddenly Larry's spare tire truck was broadcasting a combat signature only 2 entities in the galaxy had ever survived. The Papa Bear contingency. The second ship decloaked 2 seconds later, followed by a third, then a fourth, then hundreds. by the time peace harmony. Whatever's long-range sensors stopped hyperventilating, the diplomatic corridor was surrounded by 47 civilian vessels, all running on off-the-books fuel signatures and broadcasting family reunion playlists so aggressively nostalgic that one security drone malfunctioned from emotional overload. In the central command deck, High Counselor Frizzlepox, a four-eyed bureaucracy veteran who had survived the great filing uprising of Cycle 3.7, clutched her anti-anxiety beverage like it was the last sane molecule in the cosmos. Why do they all have bear logos? She whispered. Her aide, a jittery Trilaxian intern with a clipboard welded to his thorax, replied, "They appear to be part of a decentralized retaliation doctrine codenamed Operation Timeout." "Dear Harmony," she murmured, as every diplomatic safeguard simultaneously blinked invalid parental override, detected in 17 languages. Back in the banquet hall, Globthax had not moved. Unless you counted. The slow descent into existential dread that was currently curling his antennae into sad punctuation marks. Ellie had stopped crying. Mostly because she now had a glow-in-the-dark bandage on her cheek and was watching a live stream of her Aunt Clara's assault shuttle doing ballet maneuvers around an orbital refueling buoy. "Mom, Aunt Clara's on fire again," she said. Casually. "That's just her landing thrusters, sweetie," Briggs replied, already halfway through a pre-litigation checklist titled Hostile Alien Etiquette Violations. What to do when they slap your child in public. A klaxon went off. Not a standard alarm, but a human visitors have entered retaliation proximity warning. The station AI, trained primarily in passive aggression and fire drills, piped up with its usual calming tone. Reminder, Terran familial units operate on emotion-based escalation curves. Please evacuate all smug expressions and passive insults. Outside, a formation of PTA-class cruisers, ships legally categorized as educational outreach platforms, but armed with more mass drivers than an asteroid colony, arranged themselves in an unnecessarily dramatic constellation pattern called the Disappointed Mother. The Zeeblek delegation, previously smug in their sparkle-crusted ceremonial robes, now resembled a row of bedazzled popsicles melting under the heat of pure parental loathing. Commander Briggs received a direct feed from Grandma Unit 7, codename Nana Doom. "I brought banana bread and a grudge," the voice said cheerfully. "Permission to warm up the planetary negotiation cannons?" "Stand by, Nana," Briggs replied. "We're still trying diplomacy, the polite kind, the one with only minor threats." "Understood," said Nana Doom. "I'll let the pies cool." Glarbthax finally squeaked, Surely, we can discuss this. It was a misunderstanding." "You hit a human child, Ambassador," Briggs said, voice cold enough to fog glass. "There are 3 things we don't negotiate about: socks with sandals, pineapple on pizza, and child safety." At that exact moment, a live broadcast hijacked the station's main holoscreen. It was a kindergarten classroom, filled with adorable, snot-nosed, semi-domesticated chaos gremlins, all human, all staring directly into the feed with unblinking, emotionally manipulative eyes. "Hi," said a curly-haired girl with glitter-stained hands. "My name is Fiona, and this message is for space grown-ups. Please don't slap us. We're very squishy. Also, my mommy's a sniper." The screen cut out. Silence fell. Again, followed by the unmistakable sound of someone somewhere in the Zeeblek entourage wetting themselves in fear. The Galactic Council emergency lights turned from blue to orange, then to bright blinking pink, which was the worst case. Color, reserved only for catastrophic cultural incidents and interspecies talent shows gone nuclear. Ambassador Glarbthax began muttering the sacred Zeeblek chant for divine assistance, which translated loosely to, "Please, sparkly ancestors, unslap the child and make it go away." The ceiling speakers crackled. Admiral Flint Briggs, now in orbit aboard the USS Parental Guidance patched in audio only. "Glarbthax, he said, voice calm. I'm going to give you 5 minutes to surrender all diplomatic credentials, issue an unconditional apology, and send us the complete list of your species' child-rearing policies. And if I don't, the ambassador whispered. Then, came the Admiral's voice, we show you the second half of our family slideshow, the one titled, Reasons You Shouldn't Poke the Cub. Somewhere deep in the bowels of the station, a catering droid exploded purely out of secondhand stress. The humans weren't yelling. They weren't attacking. They were calmly applying consequences with the precision of emotionally weaponized logistics. And the galaxy was starting to realize far, far too late that the only thing scarier than a Terran war fleet was a family that planned its vengeance during bake sales. The first ambassador fainted during the third slide. It was titled, An Illustrated History of What Happens When You Hurt Human Children, from Cave Paintings to Kinetic Strikes. By the fourth slide, which depicted a dramatized reenactment of the infamous Chuck E. Cheese incident of 2089 involving 5 uncles, a malfunctioning pizza cannon, and a very regretful alien babysitter, 3 more diplomats were being revived by anti-panic mist and firm slaps from their aides. The Galactic Council's emergency session had been called, though session was a generous term for what was now happening, more like a diplomatic exorcism performed in committee robes while everyone tried not to wet themselves. Councillor Frizzlepox was chewing through her 4th stylus and had officially filed a mental resignation letter to the universe. We can't let them launch, she hissed, gesturing to the rapidly coalescing Terran family formation outside the station. That's not a fleet. That's a generational curse in motion. Her aide, still glued to the legal database, offered, technically under Article 7, subsection 12 of the Terran Accords, if a human minor is physically harmed by a non-human individual, all diplomatic immunity is voided and enforcement becomes, how did they phrase it? Entirely vibe-based. Vibe-based. We are negotiating against a military doctrine written in PTA meeting minutes and emoji footnotes. Across the table, the Varnax delegate, a species of gaseous, moral philosophers, simply disintegrated in horror and floated into the ventilation system, whispering something about never babysitting again. Meanwhile, back in the reception hall, Commander Briggs was polishing her stun baton while Ellie, now sipping a juice pouch labeled Organic Strawberry Quasar, watched 2 Zblek interns have a full emotional breakdown behind a potted fern. Mom, are we the bad guys? She asked sweetly. No, honey, Briggs said without looking up. We're the instructional video. On the station's lower level, Ambassador Glarbthax had barricaded himself in a panic room, constructed entirely out of commemorative plates serving spoons and legal ambiguity. The door was guarded by 2 Zblek honor guards, neither of whom had any actual combat training, but both of whom looked really stressed about it, which made them excellent door ornaments when Briggs arrived. Knock, knock, she said, stepping into view. One guard fainted. The other just dropped his ceremonial spear and ran down the hallway, yelling something about prehistoric vengeance gods with mom hair. Briggs kicked the door once. It opened immediately because Glarbthax had forgotten to activate the lock. Ambassador, she said, voice sweet enough to curdle oxygen, I'm here for your official apology, your full compliance package, and also, just for fun, I brought visuals. She tossed a portable hollow projector onto the ground. It activated with a chirp, displaying a rotating 3D model of Peace Harmony whatever station, except it was slowly being surrounded by glowing red dots, each labeled Family Unit, fully armed, emotionally justified. What is that? Glarbthax screeched, backing into his pile of dignity pillows. That's the current orbital count, Briggs replied, crouching so she was eye level. And that doesn't include the ships we haven't seen since Thanksgiving. You wouldn't dare. Oh, I would, she smiled. And if you make me miss Ellie's bedtime snack window, I'll let her godmother, Commander Tiff Snack Sniper Johnson, draft the surrender terms in crayon. At that very moment, on the far side of the station, a humanitarian broadcast drone, unaware of the situation's nuance or threat level, played a pre-scheduled documentary titled Terran Child Development, From Teething to Total Warfare. The footage included home videos of toddlers dismantling security drones for fun, 6-year-olds winning zero-gravity martial arts tournaments, and a dramatic reenactment of the time an Earth daycare center held off a pirate boarding party with Play-Doh and positive reinforcement. Delegates screamed. The Vesperian ambassador demanded exile to a planet with no children. Even the mercenary species began updating their Do Not Engage lists to include anyone under 18 Earth years or related to someone who owns a minivan. The crisis reached a peak when the Galactic Legal Archive issued a statement, not advice, not mediation, just a single flashing alert that read, "Do not slap the human's spawn, for the love of harmony." In orbit, Admiral Briggs had launched the warning salvo. It wasn't a weapon, not technically. It was a family group text, addressed to 1.2 million parental subscribers. Its contents were a single image, Ellie's tear-streaked cheek, and the phrase, "Who wants in?" Every single ship lit up like Vengeance had a loyalty program. "We're past diplomacy," Briggs muttered to herself, watching Glarbthax try to hide behind a decorative curtain. "We're in the apology extraction phase now." The apology extraction phase began with Grandma Judy's arrival. Her ship, the SS Tupperath, broke from FTL like an angry casserole dish flying out of a cupboard. Her comms channel opened with a cheerful ding, and her voice came through. The station's emergency PA system like the sound of fresh cookies baked in righteous fury. "Sweetie, Nana's here. I brought snickerdoodles and a thermal railgun. Where do you want me?" Commander Briggs didn't look up. She was too busy tightening the diplomatic zip ties around Ambassador Glarbthax's ankles while he whimpered. Something about cultural misunderstandings and how eternal harmony wasn't meant to be enforced through interpretive sculpture violence. "Put her in low orbit," Briggs replied casually. "Let her simmer on standby. Oh, and tell Grandpa Frank he can release the slideshow." A distant ding was heard, followed by screams from several council chambers, because Grandpa Frank's slideshow had no chill. The Galactic Council's feeds lit up with images of past Terran diplomatic adjustments, a pie chart titled "How Many Species Needed a Timeout," and a flowchart ending in "Cry and Shower or Become." Democracy? Delegates began resigning mid-meeting. One even tried to defect to Earth via Zoom call. Meanwhile, the Zeeblek Supreme Matriarch arrived via emergency holowarp, a 12-foot-tall, sequin-covered nightmare who floated in on a throne, made of legal precedents and hairspray. "This is an outrage!" she roared, pointing all 4 glitter-coated claws at Briggs, who didn't blink. "We will not be bullied by Terran sentimentality." "It's not sentiment," Briggs replied, standing and folding her stun baton with a click. "It's doctrine. Family-first military protocols, codified in blood, glitter, and legalese. You slapped a kid. That's not just a red line. That's a blood sugar-triggered orbital response. We demand a tribunal. Sure. Your funeral?" Then she turned to the nearest Zeeblek and added, "Also, just FYI, we brought the aunties." The alien's pupils dilated in raw ancestral memory. A moment later, Operation Emotional Reckoning activated. From 28 different family-class strike cruisers, the aunties deployed, tactical holographic. Banners unfurled across the station walls, reading things like "Not mad, just disappointed" and "You've embarrassed your entire species." One ship began broadcasting old Terran sitcoms dubbed in Galactic Basic, but with all the parental guilt stares enhanced by tactical zooms. A small fleet of hover drones dropped down carrying hot casseroles and cold judgment. Peace harmony. Whatever's AI suffered a full system reset trying to process the passive aggression density spike. Meanwhile, in the detention bay now doubling, as a temporary parental war room, Admiral Briggs folded his arms and stared at the station's shield readout. "You know what I don't get?" he said flatly. They thought they could hit a kid, and we'd file a form. To be fair, muttered Commander Tiff Johnson, currently loading a presentation titled The Ballad of Galactic Regrets, a Multimedia Threat, we do have forms, just explosive ones. Outside, the orbital formation was shifting. The civilian fleet had fully integrated into something the Galactic Naval Registry would later label the PTA Phalanx Formation. It had no official combat designation, but it looked like it was about to ground an entire species. Glarbthax, now officially stripped of his diplomatic title and 3 layers of scales from nervous sweating, sat in his decorative shame cube, watching the number of glowing Terran ships multiply like emotionally damaged rabbits. "Please," he croaked. "We didn't understand. Earth customs." "You understood slapping," Briggs said, tapping the projector again. "You're about to understand consequences." The AI pinged. Incoming communication. From the cousins. Admiral Briggs raised an eyebrow. "We have cousins inbound?" "Yeah," muttered Johnson. "The Carolina branch. No one told them this wasn't a potluck, so they're bringing brisket and EMPs." "Of course they are," Briggs sighed. On the council floor, Frizzlepox stood in the middle of a now empty chamber, watching the data scroll like a man watching his own resignation letter type itself. "What are they even asking for?" she whispered. Her aide answered without looking up. "A written apology, a formal commitment to the Galactic Minor Safety Pact, and cupcakes. Cupcakes? With sprinkles, and respect." Frizzlepox slumped into her chair like it owed her therapy. "Fine," she muttered. "Give them whatever they want. Just make it stop." In the background, a banner unfurled in fireworks across orbit. Written in bright neon pink, blinking with parental cheer and veiled menace, it read, "You messed with the wrong child." And underneath it, in smaller but legally binding font, "We accept apologies in writing, tears, or legally notarized snack offerings." The galaxy was on the brink. Not of war, but of a formal bake sale-led capitulation, and there was not a single species brave enough to interrupt the humans when the cousins brought brisket. The final straw wasn't the orbiting casserole cannon, or the PTA fleet broadcasting "You Are My Sunshine" in minor key on all frequencies. It was when the cousins, Carolina Division, arrived wearing aprons, tactical flip-flops, and armed with emotional support brisket in uranium-hardened Tupperware. They didn't even dock. They just dropped a slow-cooked threat pod labeled "Bless Your Heart" directly onto the Council's landing pad. It hissed, clicked open, and released the smell of intergenerational disappointment and hickory, smoke into the diplomatic ventilation system. Ambassador Glarbthax, wrapped in a thermal guilt blanket, let out a whimper so high-pitched it disrupted 3 bird-based alien languages. "This isn't diplomacy," he rasped, face buried in his own claws. "This is a potluck-themed psyop." "Technically," muttered one of his aides, "it's Clause 19A of the Emergency Interfamily Response Doctrine, cultural retaliation via culinary superiority." The Zeeblek Supreme Matriarch, once a towering beacon of sequin-crusted authority, had been reduced to nervously rearranging apology bouquets in the corner while muttering legal disclaimers. One of the smaller alien delegates approached Briggs with a tremor in all 17 limbs. "Please, tell us how to surrender. We tried to draft an apology, but the humans in our legal team all started crying halfway through and left to call their moms." Briggs sighed, turned to Ellie, now perched on a chair, cradling a warm cookie from Nana Judy and petting a tactical therapy possum named Nugget, and said, "Honey, you ready to hear the magic words?" Ellie nodded, solemn as a 12-year-old with orbital backup could be, and leaned into the live mic. "You hurt me," she said gently, "but I forgive you, if you say sorry the real way." That was it. That was the moment. The Zeeblek delegation collapsed like folding chairs at a barbecue. Glarbthax crawled forward, and trembling, produced a handwritten apology scroll scented with conciliatory spices and inked in diplomatic ink mixed with his own ceremonial blood proteins. "We are sorry," he wheezed. "We will protect all children, always, forever, no matter the species." "And?" Briggs prompted. "And we will bake cookies," he whispered. "With sprinkles," Ellie added, beaming. "Of course," he choked. "Double sprinkles." Outside, the orbital formation shifted, not into battle, but into coordinated withdrawal. Ships blinking out of FTL one by one like polite relatives quietly exiting a family. Reunion after the dessert course. Inside the council chamber, Admiral Briggs updated the Galactic Charter's minor protection protocols, now enforced by Article B12, slap a kid, lose your orbitals. Clause B13, emotional trauma equals tactical grandma deployment, and the new emergency hotline, 1-800-MOM says no. The resolution passed unanimously, not because they believed in it, but because every delegate could still feel the casserole pressure in their soul. Peace harmony. Whatever station was declared a galactic child safety zone, adorned with new banners in Terran pinks and blues, and a glowing hologram of Ellie, holding a juice pouch like a sacred relic, flanked by two smiling aunties with sidearms. 6 months later, child injury rates in the galaxy dropped by 97%. Bake sales were now registered military events. And Earth's official diplomatic strategy had been renamed Snack-Based Deterrence Doctrine in at least 17 interstellar defense journals. The Papa Bear fleet was disbanded, officially. But everyone knew better. Those ships still hovered in civilian airspace, disguised as schools, bakeries, antique shops, waiting, watching, listening for the next cry of a hurt child echoing through the void, and every species, every empire, now shared one universal proverb, whispered by terrified babysitters, posted in playgrounds, and carved into the stone walls of ancient academies. Never hurt a human. Child, because their mom might still be listening.